What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I am just elated to be joined by two of the best in the business, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we today?
As always, it is a beautiful Thursday. Not too hot, thankfully, in NYC, so we're not suffering a blazing summer yet. But it's only going to be straight fire here on the show today, as always. I'm excited, boys. I'm ready for another one.
I hate going out to Jurgen because I never have a cool enough answer. But I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah. We all know the hierarchy in this podcast, but yeah, pretty decent week in terms of news. Mostly NBA news, but we also got NHL news. Yeah, so let's go into it, guys. The rundown NHL. We got some hiring news, right, Jer? We got a team that just hired their coach, a new team actually.
Yes, we did.
Like the rest of the sports world, we're gonna criticize Ben Simmons. I'm just kidding. Not really, but yeah, gonna be some Ben Simmons talk, and then we will talk about a new coaching hire in the NBA, and then we're gonna talk about the results of the NBA draft lottery. So as we do always, Jurg, let's kick it off with how we always do it. NHL talk. Talk to me. What are we at?
So the opening face-off of the podcast, as always, is the quick NHL update with yours truly. So, just some quick NHL news to bring to everybody. Yes, like Chris alluded to, there is a new head coaching hiring in the NHL once again already, and it is by the newest team in the league themselves. The Seattle Kraken are not waiting any longer to introduce who their first head coach is, which is kind of a good thing considering about a month from now or so, actually no, even way less than that, just a couple weeks from now is the expansion draft. So with that, they decided to make, as with Ron Francis being the head honcho of decision making in Seattle, they made Dave Haxtell the first ever head coach in Seattle Kraken history. Now, for any hockey fans listening to this, if you have just gone onto either an Instagram or a Twitter post about this and looked at the comments, a lot of vitriol in there. Very, very, I don't even want to say mixed across the board from what I've seen so far. A lot of people not a fan of this hire in particular. So the reason why a lot of people are not a fan in particular is mainly number one, the idea that the Kraken, if they could have pushed harder in previous weeks, maybe they could have been the ones to have landed Gerard Gallant, but of course he's off to the Rangers. And if anyone would have preferred Rick Tocchet, who was another candidate for this head coaching position, then they would have been disappointed because Tocchet actually, this is funny enough, guys. Tocchet was interviewed 3 times for the position, but ends up not getting it. Very rare that a guy is interviewed about it 3 times, but ultimately doesn't get the opportunity. Instead, it goes to Haxtell. And well, this news broke actually earlier today as we are recording this. And honestly, the news that Haxtell was even in the running didn't come until like the last 24 to 48 hours. So I don't know if this was something that Seattle had planned from the start. I don't know if this was just something where their interview with him went really well and it swayed them heavily. I guess it clearly did because ultimately they make this decision. So why all the vitriol in the comments, like I alluded to earlier? Well, a lot of people aren't exactly a fan of Haxtell. He uh, does have some head coaching experience. He was previously head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers for 4 seasons, where in those 4 seasons they did make the playoffs twice, but both times they lost in the first round. A lot of Flyers fans, they in recent years for their head coaching, it hasn't been great ever since they last made the Stanley Cup Finals back in 2010. And since then, they've been trying to find the right coach, and Haxtell was clearly not the guy. Even though they made the playoffs twice, it was clear that he wasn't the guy to take them to the next level. And there were a lot of mismanagement and missteps under him while he was in Philly. So let's just say he's not exactly remembered fondly by Flyers fans. And even around the league, he wasn't necessarily a popular hire back when Philly got him. He was actually, this is very rare, when he got the Flyers job, he was actually, I think he was just the third head coach ever to go from collegiate coaching to straight to NHL head coaching with no in between. So he was brought in, in a position where no one had expected him to get up to at first. Normally, for a guy like that, he would go through the minors, maybe at least be an assistant coach at most, after following his collegiate coaching career. But no, he was given the big position right away. He didn't really do that great. Yes, he made the playoffs twice, but you could really attest it more to the talent and kind of some luck compared to his actual skill. But here's where I will only very slightly defend it, is the fact that ever since then, you have to remember that was his first ever head coaching gig in the pros. Since then, when he was fired from Philly, he was an assistant coach these last few seasons, especially he was the assistant for the Toronto Maple Leafs this past year. And you got to believe a guy like that, he has the 4 years of head coaching experience under his belt now. He has, assistant coaching experience now on a playoff team, a successful regular season team. Playoffs is a different story, but they did end up qualifying. So you got to believe that this could potentially make a difference for him in goal round number 2. And I'm not going to say, I'm not going to heavily criticize it to an extent like a lot of people have, but I'm in no way saying that this is a great first hire. I definitely think the Kraken, they could have done a better job at this. I think what they're hoping for is a little bit of good luck here where, Gerard Gallant, when you think of what happened from the end of his Florida Panthers tenure to Vegas, obviously that turnaround, I guess Seattle's hoping for something like that, but this isn't the same kind of coach. Hackstall isn't the worst, but he's nowhere near Gerard Gallant's caliber. So that's kind of a swing and a miss right there by Seattle, if I have to say, which I'm kind of disappointed in because, I have hopes for them of trying to be competitive, at least in year one. They will be in the Pacific Division once the divisions are officially realigned again. And the Pacific, it's not deep, but it's pretty top heavy, and I don't see Seattle beating out some of the top teams once we see the officially realigned division. So that's just from my perspective. But hey, maybe Hackstall in his time since he was the head coach of Philadelphia, maybe he's learned a lot. Maybe he's going to bring this renewed energy again. It's going to be a second go around at it, and very rarely does a coach in the NHL, at least, very rarely will they fail in their second go around, like to a more harsher extent than the first one. So I'm going to be very passively optimistic with this. So that goes with the coaching news in the NHL, but that doesn't finish all the big news we have because the Minnesota Wild, who did make the playoffs this year, who were eliminated by the Vegas Golden Knights in round 1 in a competitive 7-game series, have a little bit of sweating to do, and it's not even officially the offseason yet. So a name I've definitely said on this show before, Kirill Kaprizov, a dynamic young winger for the Minnesota Wild, actually was only on a 1-year deal this past season. And what a 1 year he had. Set the Minnesota Wild goals record for a rookie in a season, I believe with the points record as well, is up for the Calder Memorial Trophy, which is the Rookie of the Year award in the league. Absolutely, superstar potential player. He showed it on both on and off the ice early on in his career for Minnesota. But at the same time, he has obviously reached an impasse now with the team. And this is interesting because when it comes to Minnesota, like I just don't understand what they're doing here. So the whole issue in contracts between the two parties right now is the fact that Kaprizov allegedly only wants a short-term deal and Minnesota wants to lock him in long-term. This is a pretty common thing that happens with these overseas kids that come late and they don't necessarily sign the usual 3-year rookie entry level deals. They sign like 1 or 2 years at first. Then they try to go for some money and then they go for their big contract after. See Artemi Panarin, see Dominik Kubalik. I feel like I'm just naming Blackhawks players at this point, but this is actually a pretty common thing that happens. So I'm not surprised that he's going for this. If there was no real substance behind these rumors, I feel I wouldn't be concerned. But the fact that CSKA Moscow in the KHL has been in contact with his people and they are ready and more than willing to make a very substantial financial offer, then Minnesota needs to get its act together. They just need to bite the bullet, sign the kid to whatever length he wants. If it's a 2-year deal, it's a 2-year deal, and you keep him because the GM up there in Minnesota, Billy Guerin, he's very early in his tenure. And if your tenure gets highlighted by the fact that you let a young offensive dynamo star player go because you didn't want to agree to a contract with him, that is a massive indictment on your managerial career and not something you want, especially early in your tenure. So that's my perspective on that situation. If you're Minnesota, just bite the bullet, pay the kid, see what happens in the next few years, and then you reassess from there, especially because you need to get some contracts off that team within the next 2 years off anyway. So I think this could work out for Minnesota just fine, but of course they're trying to be stubborn, but it's not going to work out for them. I just don't think it will on that end. I think I do think the two sides will come to an agreement, but it'll definitely be a short-term deal, that's for certain. So that wraps up all the off-the-ice news. Now for on-the-ice stuff really fast, we will have a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup semifinals. The Tampa Bay Lightning and New York Islanders will go to Game 7 as the Islanders won Game 6 as the time of recording this. Dame was actually watching that Game 6 live, and he could attest that it was quite the crazy atmosphere where he was watching it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
It was quite the atmosphere, quite the game. The Islanders, they tied up the game in the third. They forced overtime, then they win it. And we're set for a absolutely great Game 7 between the two teams. The Eastern Conference Finals rematch from last year has not disappointed, and of course we get the winner take all game, which I'm so happy about. I'm so I need at least one of these things to go to 7, but perhaps both could go the distance. We will see after tonight. As the time this will be posted up on YouTube, we will see the result of the Vegas Golden Knights and Montreal Canadiens Game 6. Montreal holds the series lead 3-2, boys. And the low-seeded team, the 4th seed in the North Division coming into the playoffs, has a chance to go, not technically speaking all the way because they haven't won it yet, but at least make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. This would be the first time that a Canadian team has made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in a decade, actually. And for Montreal, I think this is the first time they're going to make it back to the Stanley Cup Finals since they last won the Cup. So this is absolutely massive game for them. It's in Montreal, which is, you want to talk about hockey environments. Montreal is one of like the top 2 to 3 teams that I want to go see a home game like in their own arena to when like everything is back to normal, because the atmosphere there is just next level. So if you're gonna, at least I hope that everyone, when you listen to this, I hope you caught a glimpse of what that game 6 was like, because the energy that Montreal is going to bring in the game is going to be wild. And the Canadians have the momentum. Vegas, they need to get their act together. They keep having this goalie discussion. Marc-Andre Fleury had a terrible game 5. And I think they just need to settle it now, pick Robin Lehner at this point. I love Marc-Andre Fleury, but logic would dictate you're just going to run with Robin Lehner. He's going to be the guy for game 6 and probably game 7. And then we see what happens from there. But if you're Vegas, like, it's a pressure cooker, not just for this season, not just for you to continue this year's cup run, but following years as well. Because this Vegas team, if they go yet another season where they fail to hoist the cup and they disappoint with the expectations, something's going to happen to that organization. There's no way a team this close against the cap with another failed season at the end of the day, they're not going to survive. Like, there's going to be some players on this team that get moved around a little bit. So that's the situation Vegas is dealing with here. I wouldn't call it a blueprint per se, because they wouldn't blow it up, but I foresee changes to the roster if they don't win this series here ultimately. So we'll see what happens with tonight's game. And yeah, I'm excited. The Stanley Cup Finals are among us, boys, and I cannot wait.
Beautiful. Beautiful as always. Yeah. It's good when Damien's actually watching hockey games. So big plus for the NHL.
Did you watch?
No, I didn't watch actually. But my Seattle Kraken making moves out there, so that's all I care about. Yeah, but at least we got a respectful team from New York, going far. In these days, So I can't say the same about other boroughs like Brooklyn. Anyway, so we move on to NBA news. Yeah, guys, a bit of slander was occurring towards a specific player in Philadelphia. That's right, Benjamin Simmons catching heat. Yeah, so to anyone that doesn't know, I mean, you should know by now, the Philadelphia Sixers got eliminated shockingly by the Atlanta Hawks in 7 games. And as soon as the series was over, I think the sports world just, threw fireballs at Ben Simmons, basically for a few reasons that I'm going to let my co-hosts kind of dive deep into. But before we get to the nitty grits, I do want to read some stats, of course. Now, Game 7, obviously the series in general was a little bit infuriating when you watch it from a perspective, when you watch it kind of pinpointing Ben Simmons, but Game 7 in general, the winner-go-home game, obviously the most important game. Ben Simmons, I believe, scored, give me a sec. So Ben Simmons had 5 points, 2 of 4 shooting. He also had 13 assists and 8 rebounds. So obviously, those stats kind of get overshadowed by the 5 points, essentially, and the 2 or 4 shooting. Yeah, so Ben Simmons was the, I guess, villain of Philadelphia, if you will, after that game. But there's an interesting stat that I do want to read, of course. Now, Ben Simmons, in each fourth quarter of the series, I'm talking about from Game 1 all the way to Game 7. So Game 1, 2 for 2 field goal attempts, okay? Game 2, 0 for 0 field goal attempts. Game 3, 1 for 1 field goal attempts. And then Game 4 through 7, 0 for 0 field goal attempts. And for anyone that might be, a little behind right now, Ben Simmons did not attempt a field goal in the fourth quarter in the last 4 games of the series. So Philadelphia 76ers fans are irate at Ben Simmons. We have me and Damien have a mutual friend that is a Ben Simmons apologist. No slander towards Matt. No slander towards
Nah,
Matt. So I
big
want to keep it.
slander. What the fuck?
All right. Anyway, so this, of course, has led to a lot of backlash, and rightfully so, because I think in previous episodes we have talked about Ben Simmons, and I guess a lot of this has to do with his character, because I think it's been years now since the main flaw has. It's been years since everyone has been kind of pinpointing the flaw that Ben Simmons can't shoot, and he still hasn't made that adjustment yet. I think it's different if you're like legitimate, if you're like not succeeding in improving your shot, that's one thing. But if you're not even attempting to improve your shot, that's the main thing here. So I think people are just frustrated at the fact that he is not even attempting at this point. But obviously, the hack of Ben Simmons was successful on the Hawks' part because it really, messed with the Sixers' flow. And, some of the times you won 1 for 2, sometimes you won 0 for 2. But it was obviously it cost them a lot towards the end, especially down the stretch. And then I think like Ben Simmons is a really good player in my opinion, and I think we could all agree on that. But the lack of aggression here, and like I said, the last 4 games he didn't attempt one field goal in the fourth quarter, which is unacceptable because I think Ben Simmons has a superstar ceiling, but I think it's his character that kind of brings it down a little bit in my opinion because we've talked about this, and I think Damien mostly. He does have a little bit of diva tendencies. There was a report. I do not know how legitimate this is because it is Stephen A. Smith at the end of the day, who just a lot of bullshit comes from him. That he gets quote unquote babied. A lot of yes men around him. So I guess you could attribute this to just him not being motivated and him just kind of being comfortable with where he's at. So I mean, look, Ben Simmons, phenomenal facilitator, phenomenal defender. But I mean, 2 for 4 to Game 7 field goal attempts is inexcusable in my opinion. I think everyone has seen the play in which he passed up that wide open layup. That was just ridiculous in my opinion because I think he tried to defend himself in the post game saying, "I thought Gallinari was coming behind me and I saw John Collins approaching." I think something like that. I'm just like, bro, come on now. Like you saw Trae Young in front of you. Gallinari is one of the most unathletic players in the NBA. Wide open too right there, and he passes it to Thibault, and Thibault got fouled but won 1 for 2. But that I think, is detrimental to the comeback because they were essentially like down 2 at that point or down 3. But Thibault won 1 for 2, could have had an easy 2 right there. Momentum shifts. You build a little bit of momentum there. So I think that play was kind of a summation of what Ben Simmons' series looked like, and I think fans are angry at this point, and I don't blame them to be honest. This has led to a lot of people wondering if Simmons will be traded. I don't necessarily know how likely that'll be. That'll be discussion when the offseason officially occurs, when the championship is done. But yeah, I mean, look, I've never been huge on Ben Simmons. I understood that the talent was there, but at this point, I think there's no one to blame but him. Um, Doc Rivers coaching aside, that's another segment for another time. But he has got to really step it up, dog. I like this is it's getting what? How many years has he been in the league so far? 4 or 5 or 6. I don't. He's going into year 6 or something. I mean, if you don't want to count the first year because he was out for the entire season, so I guess year 5. You have to make adjustments at some time, So, I mean, it's mostly on him because he just seems like he doesn't want to hear anything. Again, if he's comfortable, that's a problem because you need to be uncomfortable in these situations to improve your game. But he just looks very stubborn in terms of just like trying to in terms of just being told of what needs to be done. So I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of backlash, so maybe that will kind of jumpstart the rebuilding process in terms of shooting a jump shot. But who knows at this point? Maybe it's time for a change of scenery. I'm not sure, but yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this, Jurg. What do you think about the whole Ben Simmons chaos?
It like you said, I've been a big proponent of if we could see the best version of him, Ben Simmons would be a top 10 player in the game by far. I believe the best version of Ben Simmons we haven't seen anywhere near it yet. I still think we're a year or 2 away from seeing it. But unlike a lot of other people, I don't think the thing with Ben is his lack of shooting. Unlike the modern trend, I personally believe you can be a superstar player in today's game. And while shooting isn't your best thing, if you have that other guy there, it can be different. Like Giannis, our whole thing with Giannis is he can be so dominant, and the thing with his shooting is sometimes he falls in love with his jump shot a little bit. The problem isn't even that with Simmons. I think if he had a competent jump shot, he he would be selective with it still. But if needed, I think he would do it properly. He wouldn't just shoot every single three wide open every single time like Giannis like showed the tendency to do at the end of the Nets series. And even still, Brooklyn lost. So what does that say about them? But with Simmons, is just forget jump shooting. Offensively, he just doesn't want to take the ball to the basket anymore. And this is a complete 180 from years ago. The first postseason that this Trust the Process 76ers group made, they faced the Miami Heat in round one. And I saw firsthand through 5 games that, to me, if Ben Simmons is the guy attacking, it's going to be dangerous for everyone else because then it lets Joel Embiid, like, that offense is so much better when Ben Simmons is actually in tune, right? They had a game earlier this season when it was no Embiid, and I think Harris may have been like hurt. I think he was playing, but I think he may have been hurt or wasn't 100% or whatever. And Simmons dropped like 42 in a game. And where has that Ben Simmons been ever since? Like, it is just mind boggling to me how this dude, he's not as athletic as Giannis, but he's still like 6'9".
He's a good
He
finisher. He's a really good finisher.
Exactly. He can run the floor. He's a finisher. He's an amazing defensive player. Like, we want. I need to defend. I'm not going to defend him fully, but you got to defend his game 7 to the point where part of the reason Trae Young shot so terribly was Ben Simmons like
Yeah,
helping.
yeah. When he guarded him, he was locked up.
Yeah, so Ben Simmons, like, I heard a lot of people like taking it to the extreme where if you were to trade Ben Simmons, could you even get a first round pick out of him? Yes, you could. A 25-year-old with all the potential still left in him, you're going to get something back in a trade. And the fact that I'm saying that has clearly shown where I feel. I don't think this team can win anymore with Ben being there. And I personally hate to say that because I'm such a big Simmons guy, but he has shown too much, too often, time and again, that he doesn't want to take the ball to the basket aggressively enough, that he doesn't want to take even a mid-range jumper here and there, that he doesn't even want to shoot from the free throw line because of the stats you were mentioning before, Chris. If I'm not mistaken, whatever the minimum amount of attempts was, like 50 or 70, like he shot the worst free throw percentage in a single playoff run that we've seen in what, like 40 years or something like that?
That includes Shaq.
That includes, yeah, that includes Shaq. I'm pretty. I mean, I don't know if he took 70 in a run, but like that probably includes Ben Wallace. Like, just dear God, man, dear God, that is not a list you want to be on. So the fact that it's just that bad, and I hate to say this, but I think he has shown on the court fear at this point. And I don't know what needs to be done mentally or psychologically to him to help him. And maybe it just needs to be a change of scenery. Because here's the thing, man. It's one thing when you fail to show up in the game 7. It's another thing where you deliberately passed up on the wide open dunk, which, like you said, Chris, there is not a single individual in this world that fears Danilo Gallinari defensively. There is no such thing as a professional basketball player that is scared of Danilo Gallinari helping on defense. That is not something that exists. So the fact that that's the excuse that Ben Simmons uses is downright bad. And for that to happen in Philadelphia, oh no. Oh no. I don't even want to go into the comments section of some Philadelphia team post and what they're saying about Simmons. And I recommend he tries to stay off too. Granted, he's still probably trying to shoot his shot off the court at these other Instagram famous girls because that's clearly the only shot making he does. But aside from that, like, I don't think he's a fit there anymore. I think Embiid needs another scorer. I think Simmons needs to be next to a more ball dominant scorer in terms of, just someone's there to take the perimeter shots. Because while I love Joel Embiid, he's not the guy that you want taking like 8, 9, 10 threes either. Because let's not say that Joel Embiid's innocent here. In game 4 and 5, back-to-back games, he shot 3 of 21 in the second half of those 2 games.
Yeah.
Like, Philly had plenty of chances to win this before it got to 7. So while Ben Simmons deserves plenty of flack, you gotta, like, I'm not letting Embiid off. He deserves a little bit. And then Doc Rivers, like, oh man, I legitimately thought, like, is there a chance this dude gets fired after year 1? And it still may happen. You never know. So it's just a mess in Philadelphia right there. And if you got to pick someone that's going to get the axe for it, Simmons is number 1 on that list.
Yeah, Dane, before you go, Jurg, I was thinking a few things. The Doc Rivers thing is just, yeah, he is just, like, my dad has tried to talk to me about it. He's a really overrated coach. And while Ben Simmons should be, at the forefront of all the criticism, I mean, my dad's argument is that well, Doc Rivers has to put him in a position. He needs to coach him or like to a position where like he needs to put Ben Simmons in order to thrive. To put him in a situationally, it's also on Doc Rivers, and I could see that as well. I don't know if I didn't see the series. Like there was times where this game, like games were blowouts where I just didn't watch the second half, and then of course Philly just loses them. But Doc Rivers like in-game adjustments were very mediocre, you know. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Doc Rivers deserves a lot of criticism. To which extent I don't necessarily know because I didn't view the series that tactically. Joel Embiid, I'm giving a pass though because he was carrying the team on his back with a torn meniscus. So the jump shots, I kind of understood because he does need to play conservative because he didn't want to like mess up his knee even more. So I'm giving Embiid a pass. But there were times where like missed free throws down the stretch. You know, was it game? It was either game 5 or game 6. No, game 6 is when they. I don't know, but it was.
Game 5 is when they lost.
I'm trying to think where there was these two missed free throws that Embiid. I think it was the 26-point lead that they
Oh yeah, that was
they
game
let slip.
5 then. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
game 5.
Embiid missed like two free throws, and like those are the situations in which Embiid just needs to knock those down, you know. And those were ones that like kind of gave the game away because Atlanta got the ball back, went to the line, and you know we're like up 5 with like 4 seconds left, something like that. But yeah, I think there are factors in it, but Simmons definitely is the guy to blame. But also like he doesn't seem like a dude that gets phased. Like he looks like mentally he looks like a strong-willed dude. So it's kind of surprising to me to see him kind of like get phased like this, you know. But I mean, if so, he does a really good job at hiding it, to be honest. Because I didn't like Simmons looks like a dude that doesn't like let anything get to his head. But clearly, I was wrong. Dame.
So I've personally never been a Ben Simmons guy, even since the draft process. I've always said that I'd rather had Jaylen Brown over Ben Simmons going into the draft, and maybe the first couple years they didn't really hold true, but now you can clearly, if anybody would rather want Jaylen Brown than a team over Ben Simmons. But yeah, Ben Simmons, his problem is just that he doesn't care. It's that's what I've always said about him. He just looks like a guy who doesn't care. Um, he like I don't know what he does in the off season because he hasn't really got better at anything. He's honestly got worse if anything. You saw these summer league clips on Twitter and stuff of him shooting jump shots, pulling up from mid ranges and stuff like that, and knocking them down. And now you don't even see him shooting these kind of shots. So I don't know what's been going on, but I think it's all in his head. I just don't think he has the will to get better. And I don't understand how when he chills with LeBron, he's part of clutch. Like I know these guys are in his ear and stuff, so I don't know why he doesn't just get better and try to get better. But overall, I do think he's the main problem with the 76ers. I've been saying it for a while. I know a couple years ago it was kind of like a debate who's the guy for the Sixers, and Embiid is a Simmons. Like, who do they trade if things don't work out? And I've always said it was Ben Simmons, and it still holds true to this day. I do think they need to trade him. I know they came out today in a report that they see him as a franchise piece, and they're not looking to trade him, but I mean, how long are you going to keep going with this until you waste Embiid's prime of his career until he really completely breaks down his body? So I do think they need to trade him because it's just not working. Um, Clay doesn't want to get better. He doesn't fit with Embiid either. So I don't know where they're going to trade him. I don't know what possibly they can get for him, but this experiment is definitely over. They need to get rid of him before they definitely should get rid of him before they get rid of Doc Rivers. I agree Doc Rivers is a little overrated and he should get a large portion of the blame for the way these playoffs went for the Sixers, but Ben Simmons is definitely the number one target as to who they should get rid of this coming off season.
I mean, I definitely see your point, Dame. I'm not saying like deliberately like I thought of it as definitive, but I definitely like saw a scenario in my head like if Philly loses this, like Doc needs to be chided because that game, his game 7 game planning was just so bad. Like how many times was Seth Curry? He should not have been guarding Kevin Huerter as much as he was. Like Huerter just absolutely not dominated, but he was getting easy buckets in that game 7. So I'm not saying Doc deserves it more than Simmons because I think ultimately, like you said, Simmons is going to be like the first guy out of there, but Dog needs to be looked at. Like this is not going to be a case in like Philly or Boston where it's like, okay, here's the disappointment, but you still got like 3 or 4 years left on the job. No, 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 no. If they don't make it to the NBA Finals next season, like they do need to switch up the team a little bit, but if they don't make the finals next season, they are going. I don't see him keeping that job for long. I just don't.
Yeah. Like I said, he definitely deserves his share of the blame, and I do think it's going to get definitely harder next year when the Nets are fully healthy. And this year was kind of their year to go get it done. But like if I want to put I guess one excuse for Doc Rivers is kind of hard to game plan for your offense when you're playing basically a 4-on-5 with Ben Simmons. That would be my only argument to try to defend him.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you guys make really good points there. Well, the thing is, like this year, like Jurg said, was their best opportunity to try and win a
I said that.
championship. Like,
Yeah, Dame said that.
well, I wish
Never
Jurg said
give
it,
me
but I
credit.
mean, uh, yeah, it's gonna be again like Embiid wasn't fully healthy, but like seeing it now, if Embiid was fully healthy, like they're not gonna beat the Nets. Embiid wasn't fully healthy, but he was still putting up like crazy numbers against the Hawks, so he was good enough to at least have a massive impact on the series. And I'm like, man, if you couldn't beat the Hawks, and no disrespect to the Hawks because they're killing it right now, but like you couldn't beat the Hawks. I don't. There's no evidence that you could have beaten the Bucks. You definitely couldn't have beaten the Nets. Well, like where is you can't tear it down essentially because you still have Embiid. But yeah, I always thought Simmons was the perfect complement to Embiid. You know, like this pass first, like big point guard. There's always that rumor mill of just like, yo, is he gonna go to Portland or something? Gonna get traded to Portland? You know, maybe for like a CJ McCollum or something. And I think that trade could benefit both teams essentially. But I mean, I don't know. I think there's this conspiracy theory, and I've always said this. I've been saying this for a few years now that Ben Simmons eventually wants to end up being a Laker.
Oh
You
my
know,
god.
but he has that, like you could tell by him that like okay, he wants Hollywood, like he wants LA, but I don't know. That conspiracy theory is like maybe he's trying to play his way out of Philly to get to LA. You know, he requests a trade and then boom, Lakers. I mean, they can't afford him essentially, and I don't know what pieces you're gonna get back, but I don't know. I think eventually he'll want to go to the Lakers, but this is not gonna get easier in my opinion for Philly. Like they have a lot of things to figure out this offseason. But any final comments based on what I said, maybe?
Nah, fuck that guy.
They they definitely have. This is going to be the off season of a lot of retools or blow ups. Like I, of the 16 teams that made the playoffs, like I want to say a good like 5 to 7 of them could have significantly different rosters come next season. And when I say that, I mean at least like one piece is either off a team or on a new team. Like this is going to be an interesting off season.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, especially when like because like next season, I think certain teams that got bounced early will get back to normal. Like the Nets, I think healthy. I mean, we'll see. The Lakers, I think, will be a big threat. And East teams, I think, will get better as well. Miami, I think, is primed to make a move. So like Philly needs to do something because I feel like a lot of teams are going to move up. But yeah, enough about them. We move on to a coaching hire that occurred in Indiana. So the Indiana Pacers have officially hired Rick Carlisle. I woke up to this news and I was very mixed on it. I think the Pacers on paper have a really good team. Essentially, you have Malcolm Brogdon, T.J. Warren, Karis LeVert, Miles Turner. Am I missing someone from that? I feel like I am. Zabonis, excuse me. Yeah, so like on paper, this should be a playoff team, and I get it. Like they just missed the playoffs like the first time in like mad long, but I always feel like the Pacers always underachieve though, based on like what type of team they have on paper. So this is a team with the talent they have that should be at least going to the semifinals, right? But they're always like a 4 to 5th seed that ends up being in the first round and then exits in the first round. So they move on from Nate Bjorken. Is that the last name, Jurg?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So they move on from him. That was a disaster. There's articles on that how he just lost control of the locker room. So they hire Rick Carlisle. We talked about Rick Carlisle, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago. I all think we're in consensus that he's a good coach. I personally think he's just a tad overrated, but I do think this Pacers team, with the talent they have, they need to maximize their offense. And I think Rick Carlisle, who is known for his adjustments, definitely I think could help maximize the Pacers offense because they have a lot of pieces. So I think he'll be good for Zabonis, for Brogdon. I don't know. Miles Turner for me has always been that guy that's been stuck in the mud where I've been waiting for Miles Turner to just like break out of his shell, but he hasn't. He's a good player, but I feel like he could be way better than what he's given us.
We've been waiting on that for like a good 3-4
Yeah. Oh my
years.
god, yeah. Just so I think Rick Carlisle is the right coach to try and unlock a new offensive schemes for this team because the Pacers, while I don't think they should blow it up, but they did need they needed a little shift, and I think Carlisle, knowing how he handles offense, could definitely help them. I think they have the right defensive schemes, right? And I don't think that's their problem. I think their problem is just like trying to figure how do we accentuate the strengths of each player offensively because you do have to play through Sabonis. Miles Turner sometimes falls in love with the jump shot. Um, Again, you get Karis LeVert, and then you're gonna get TJ Warren back. So they have this fresh, start next year. And I think with Rick Carlisle, he'll have the offseason to kind of come up with new plays. I think it was a good move essentially. I think they'll definitely respect him more than Nate Bjorken, but I just hope that they don't end up being predominantly a jump shooting team like the Mavs kind of were. But again, he had to basically kind of play through Luka Doncic, and now there's no superstars for him to be like, all right, well, I kind of just have to focus, come up with plays that are just predominantly focused on that one player. No, I think he has a pretty scattered team. I think he could play through a lot of players and just not predominantly one. And again, of course, you lose a superstar, but you don't have to cater to just one guy, so you could kind of play through everyone at this point. So, Dame, what do you think about this hiring?
I don't really have much to say about that one because the Pacers are so boring to me, so I don't really care what they do. But overall, obviously Rick Carlisle I think is one of the best coaches in the NBA, so it definitely will help them. I kind of was hoping maybe he'd go to like the Blazers or something, or I maybe was expecting him to go to the Celtics. But then I saw the Celtics hired the Nets assistant coach, so that kind of threw that out the window. But I thought Carlisle, as good as a coach as he is, I thought he was going to find a better situation. But I guess to say Pacers are really where he wanted to be. They do have they have like a nice core, and they're not a bad team, obviously. So I think definitely with them, they're gonna be much more improved next season. They'll definitely be in the playoffs and be a dangerous team. But overall, it's just a mediocre team. I think average team and a really good coach to help them out.
I'm actually a little bit higher than for Rick Carlisle than some. I have said a few times when we talk about him that I actually think he's a pretty good coach. I think he was very good with Dallas, and while I think the tenure had a bit of a rough end, I think that Carlisle on a new team is right. And he's worked with Indiana before. Granted, it was a different organization back then, different players, different, essentially different league at that point when you think of the play style back in the day. But I think you take all that experience, he's worked with star caliber players, then I think this is something that Indiana needs. They needed the right guy. They need that guy to help push these players, but can command respect. And I think immediately, well, you could say whatever you want about Rick Carlisle, he's going to command the respect of that locker room straight up. So I think of it like that. Carlisle is definitely the guy. I think he will love to work with a Malcolm Brogdon in Indiana. Malcolm Brogdon, I feel, is like a Rick Carlisle kind of guard.
Yeah,
So
coachable as hell.
oh yeah, so he's going to be great. Sabonis as well. He's worked with versatile big men before, and this is a versatile big man that'll actually stay healthy for the team and can actually put up stats in big moments if need be, unlike the last big man that he got to work with. So ultimately, this is just going to be this is going to be good, I think, for Indiana. I actually, funny enough, I thought Carlisle had Boston written all over him until uh, the recent news about the Celtics' new head coach came out. So uh I definitely I think we all agreed. We expected him to get hired. He wasn't going to be on the sidelines, in terms of not coaching for long. But now he will be on the sidelines this upcoming season for a team. And I think he's going to help Indiana. This was definitely a disappointment. I think we all, maybe not all of us, at least 2/3 of us back in the preseason or like our midseason, thought of Indiana as like a playoff caliber team still. The fact that they were low in the play-in, that they got demolished in the play-in by, was it Washington, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they definitely believe that they should be better. Assuming from previous years, like they don't want to be in the play-in again. They probably just want to try to be the 5th or 6th seed at best. Not saying they will be next season, because of course we have to see how everyone gets healthy and improves in the offseason. But I think Rick Carlisle is a step in the right direction. He definitely keeps them a playoff team, that's for sure. And if you're Indiana, like they're not. While I usually have my opinions about teams, I don't think we can rule out this Indiana team of being like a a team to just blow it all up right now. Like I don't think it's at that point yet for them because it didn't go. Last season wasn't ideal, but it wasn't terrible for him. So that's how I see it. I think overall, for myself personally, I love the Rick Carlisle coaching move.
Yeah, yeah. They started off the season really well. It was kind of towards like the middle slash end where they started to fall apart. But I do agree with you guys. I think Rick Carlisle has a lot of toys to play with, where he has a bunch of different dudes with different skill sets. It's not just like, okay, well, it's got to be like Luca has to handle the ball, and then he attracts so much attention that we need to just space out, and just anyone that catches the ball, just shoot it. So Brogdon, very versatile offensively. Same thing with Sabonis, Turner, stretch five, Karis LeVert, and TJ Warren. A bunch of differently skilled players that he could, I think, add a different layer to. I'm excited to see how he does with his team, to be honest. But yeah, I do think in the end, I think it's you know definitely a playoff team in my opinion next year. Spoiler alert. But yeah, that's enough talk about the Indiana Pacers. We move on to the NBA Draft Lottery results. The NBA Draft Lottery was Tuesday. I can't believe it. Like, I think no one knew that the lottery was Tuesday. Everyone was just like, everyone I know that I was talking to was like, yo, the lottery's Tuesday. Did not. I don't. For me, I mean, maybe you speak for Dame, but the Knicks not being in it, you kind of lose track of this because every time I pencil that day in, because I'm just like, okay, how do I get disappointed by the lottery results this year? Not this year, baby. Nope, because the Knicks were in the playoffs. But yeah, moving along. So the lottery occurred. All right, well, we'll go from 14 down. I'll be quick. Golden State at 14, 13 the Pacers, 12 the Spurs, 11 the Hornets, 10 the Pelicans, 9 the Sacramento Kings, 8 the Orlando Magic from the Chicago Vucevic trade, 7 the Warriors because they got it from Minnesota because of the D'Angelo Russell trade. Haha. 6 the Oklahoma City Thunder, 5 the Orlando Magic, 4 the Toronto Raptors, 3 the Cleveland Cavaliers, 2 the Houston Rockets, and 1 the Detroit Pistons. Yeah, a few things. I mean, I expect Minnesota was top three protected. I knew that Minnesota was gonna like not be in the top three for some reason. I just had a feeling. They've been lucky before, but I just knew that the odds were stacked against them. So yeah, the Warriors end up having 2 lottery picks. Oklahoma City drops from I don't know 4 or 5, but they dropped to 6. Toronto moves up a few spots and they get the 4th pick. Cleveland, I'm just gonna see Cleveland in the lottery for like the rest of my life. I feel like, but they're at number 3, and Detroit wins. They won the lottery, so I'm kind of happy for the Pistons because they have been a dumpster fire for so long. They've been so relevant, but the fact that you have a chance at Cade Cunningham now, this is look. I think the Pistons actually have a good, solid young core with you have Jeremy Grant, you have Sadiq Bey, you have Killian Hayes, and you have Isaiah Stewart. So they have a decent pieces, and then you add the best point guard in the mix to that core in Cade Cunningham. I was actually curious because I was like, well, they just drafted Killian Hayes, but of course you always go best player available when you have the first pick. But then Cade Cunningham is 6'8". I've seen a bunch of his, but I haven't. Jurg, I don't know if you know a lot about him, but can he play off ball, or does he kind of like need the ball in his hands to be effective? I'm saying that because I'm just wondering how the fit with Killian Hayes, how would that work?
I think with Cade, I think there is potential for him to kind of work, things off the ball.
Like shooting guard, essentially, yeah.
No, I think he can. I think he can. Maybe like if your concerns are potentially like, I definitely understand when you put two guards together, it's like you got to worry about contrasting styles. And I think in recent years, a lot of teams have tried to make that kind of thing work, and it hasn't. But I think Hayes and Cade work because while Cade can be a playmaker. Like let's
Yeah.
just get that out the
Yeah.
way. He can be a playmaker. We are not doubting his playmaking ability at all. But I think for him, if you want to accentuate his strengths, I think just make him like that pure offensive guard, a la Shea Gilgeous-Alexander could be the way to go. And then Killian Hayes being that, just pure pass first.
Yeah.
Like you're essentially putting, I'm not comparing their skill levels, but just in terms of play style, you're putting Lonzo Ball with SGA when you think of Killian Hayes
Mm,
and Cade potentially. I think like that's what they could become because Killian, like he got hurt early in his rookie season,
yeah.
and it wasn't a phenomenal year, but he showed some glimpses at the end of what he can do on the floor, especially again as the general. And I think Cade, I never viewed him as a pure point guard anyway. He's more closer to a lot of the more the modern hybrid guards. So
Combo. Okay.
yeah, because of that, I think you could potentially make it work. But at the end of the day, like, here's the thing, Chris. It all comes down to development and coaching with a team like Detroit. And are you confident in the development and coaching staff to like help those players get it to mesh together? Like, is there a way to do so? Because like, let's say it doesn't work, then you just need to. The next step in that will be okay. If it's not going to work, then obviously Killian would have to be traded. So it's just those things you need to worry about. Like, I think if you're Detroit, I would find it really hard to not pick Cade, but you need to think of down the line here with this selection. Like, okay, if we pick Cade here, if it doesn't work out with Killian, like we're gonna have to trade the kid. We may have just gotten him, but we'd have to trade him at that
Mhm.
point. It's like that's just how it works. You cannot keep every young asset on the team forever. That's why with Oklahoma City Thunder's rebuild, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with all these picks. Because not all these first round picks are going to be on their team for the next like 4 or 5 years. That's not going to happen. You need to trade some of these picks for real NBA players at some point. So I'm going to be interested to see if they can make it work. But I, at least off rip, like initial reaction, I don't think they should look anywhere past selecting Cade Cunningham. Like he should be the guy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy because like Detroit is a city that needs relevance, in their sports teams because you got them, you got the Lions, you got the Tigers. So Cade Cunningham brings obviously some excitement to that city, but also like if I'm the Pistons, you keep this pick, and I think you give a year with Cade and Killian to like see him, to make it work. Killian is I think a better playmaker than Cade Cunningham from what I've seen, but obviously Cade is the guy. So I think it eventually can work because these are two very tall guards essentially. Because Cade plays point, he's 6'8". Killian I think is 6'5", 6'6" at the point, so they could do some damage. I think if you combine their skill sets. But the Pistons, don't overthink it. You're not going to get a talent like Cade for a while. This is your chance to get your guy for the next 7 to 8 years. So, especially for a city that like, is difficult to attract marquee agents. So don't overthink it, in my opinion, but just go Cade. The Raptors at 4, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I think Kyle Lowry's essentially gone. They do need a center. I don't want to give up who I think they could go with their fourth pick, but in my opinion, they could go a guard, and you could play like the 2 point guard schemes that you have like they did with Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. Depending on if like Jalen Suggs goes to them, but they do need a center, and I think Evan Mobley is also a possibility for them. But Toronto, man, I think whoever they get, like Toronto's already a very good team in my opinion. I just think there were so many factors as to why they like didn't make it to the playoffs, but I still think they're a very good team with a lot of good talent. So I think they're going to be really good, and I think their pick is going to be developed so well because the Raptors have one of the best developmental staffs in the NBA. So whoever goes to the Raptors, man, cherish it because I think you're going to be like they're already getting a good player, but I think his ceiling is going to be higher than what was projected if he goes to like for example the Cavaliers. Oklahoma City drops to 6. I thought like if Oklahoma City if they got like a top 3 pick, I thought they would try and make their way to the first pick eventually and just package whatever their pick was in the top 3 if it was that with the 8,000 picks that they have with along with the third pick to try and move up to number 1 for Cade and eventually pair up Cade with Shy. But yeah, they dropped to 6. I still think the Thunder will get a good player out of it, and I still think they could move up. So I don't know. The Thunder, they're the wild card here because they're more versatile in what they could do in terms of just like trading for a pick that they're looking for. So any surprises to you guys? Any picks that you thought were noteworthy of talking about, Dame?
Uh, the one of the big things I'm interested in is to see what the Warriors do. They obviously have
Yes.
7 and 14, and I know Bob Myers already came out and said that they're not looking to develop talent, so they're definitely open to talking about these picks. I think it's guaranteed they move at least one of them. Um, Most likely, maybe even both of them, but I definitely don't think they're gonna pick at both these spots for themselves. So that's gonna be interesting to see. The Pistons is just I like Kate a lot. It's just I hate to see him go to the Pistons because they're the Pistons. But like you guys are talking about Killian Hayes, just to put my input on that, I just feel like when a guy like Cade Cunningham is available, a guy with that much potential, it just doesn't matter what you do with a guy like Killian Hayes, who I don't think has anywhere near the star potential that Cade Cunningham has. Um, so that's my take on that. Who else? Let's see. What else do we have here? The Cavs just always just gonna be garbage. I think it's very good for Raptors. They're in the top four. They were just the NBA champions, and now they're going through slowly kind of a little rebuild. And to have the fourth pick already with the talent they do have on that team and the great coach they have, that's gonna be really good for them. Everything else, basically, I feel like the lottery looks like this with the rest of these teams every single year is just a different order.
You definitely have a point. I'm with Dame for sure with 2 first-round picks in the lottery. I want to see what Golden State does here. I could definitely see a scenario where at least one of, if not both, get traded for like a real star player. Golden State wants to get back like to being a high seed, not this whole playing thing.
They don't
That's
want
not their
steps
goal.
to leave in free agency. They can't. They need to put something out there.
Exactly, and this needs to be, especially because at this point Clay, we hope for the best, but at this point Clay is probably just going to be a spot up shooter at this point with maybe a little bit of defense. Like the 7th and 14th pick package with maybe a player or two from the roster could get you that guy, and you have a contract to move, because I think the 7th and the 14th pick are both enough to move a Wiggins if need be, to get a good player from one of these other teams. So that could be the case. I want to Dame, what do you think about, obviously they're in a way different position, but the 5th and 8th picks for Orlando, because you think Cole Anthony on the team, Markel Fultz is there, Jonathan Isaac when he comes back from injury, like he'll be fully healthy again next season. If you're Orlando, what are you going to do with these picks? Because obviously they're nowhere near competing. I don't think they're near competing for the play-in. But at the same time, this is a draft I've seen a lot of guards go in the top 10. Like they don't need guards necessarily. Unless you really think one is more talented than both Fultz and Anthony, like you need to go like wing or center here, if I'm not mistaken. But center is not that deep. So like, what if you're Orlando? What do you do with these picks? Maybe not so much 5th, because I think Kuminga at 5 is a possibility and he could potentially play the 3. But what about at least with the 8th pick for them?
I
By
think
the way, Dane, before you go, I thought it because I had the same thoughts, but if the Magic do go up, if they package their picks to like move up to 3 or something, I thought Kuminga would be the guy because they're kind of already stacked with like guards. You got to be Kuminga if you move up, in my opinion. Dame, sorry.
Yeah, so the Magic, I think, are in a position where they obviously just blew it all up. And when you're a team like that, the best way to rebuild is you always draft the best available player that is there on the board for you at that time. If you start going for needs and what you can do here, what you can do here, like that's how you really slow your rebuild. But in my own opinion, the best way to rebuild is you always draft the best available player and you figure out from there. Like Cole Anthony and Markel Fultz are nice pieces, but like, what is their ceiling? Like, if you could get a player with a higher ceiling, you go pick them up, you make them battle, and then the best player wins, and you figure it out from there. So that's the way I look at teams rebuilding, and obviously the Magic, that's what they're doing. They blew everything up. So whatever is the best player available at 5 for them, and at 8 for them, I think that's who they should take.
They, like I agree with Dame because like they do need a guy still. They need a guy. I think they have a bunch of solid players, but they do need that guy. And I think I don't know. It's just I feel like need and BPA is pretty like convoluted in this scenario because I mean best player available. If they move up to if they move up to like 1 or something, not 1, but if they move up to like 2 or 3, you get Suggs or you get Jalen Green, but then you what do you do with the other guards essentially? Like, so one's gonna have to move to the bench, and I know you go with like Green is obviously more talented than a Gary Harris and all that, but I think like in order to get the full potential out of these guys, they're gonna have to like play together, and I feel like with the overabundance of like certain positions, it's gonna be difficult for that to happen. So, um, I don't know, but also I also think like because the Magic kind of blew it up and they have these 2 picks, you don't necessarily need a trade because if you're a rebuilding team, you just get as many assets as you possibly can.
Right.
You look at the Nuggets, for example, like how many guys are like homegrown talents, like all of them essentially, besides like Paul Millsap, like on Austin Rivers, but that
Yeah.
was kind of like a signing mid-season. But last question, because you guys already brought it up. I mean, yeah, which star do you think the Warriors could trade for with their picks?
Ben Simmons.
That's so.
And but I don't think the Sixers would keep the picks if that was to be a thing. I think the Sixers would then have to package those picks or split them up or something like that, and then go get themselves shooters or other pieces that could help complement them better. Like, say for example, we use one of the picks and let's say Maxi or something like that, and go get Kyle Lowry and sign and trade, and then use another pick for either themselves or get another shooter for their team, something like that. I don't think if they would trade Ben Simmons to the Warriors for picks and say Andrew Wiggins, I don't think they would keep those picks.
Yeah, I
That's just
see.
an option. I'm not saying
Right.
that's what's gonna happen. It's just
I mean, no, I think like because I've seen the scenario floated out there, like Simmons to Golden State would make sense because you get the defense there. Him and Draymond defensively, like just the IQ of that defensive front court would be pretty good. And then again, Steph and Clay are there. You would just need like the fifth person in that lineup would just need to be a shooter because Ben is Ben, and then Draymond is. Let's just move past that. Um, I could see it, but at the same time, for Golden State, that forces you to then look for a stretch five, and how many stretch fives are out there that you could get to fit on this team at like a relatively cheap deal.
It's
So,
only. Oh yeah, 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 okay.
so yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, who could they get?
To be
I
honest, like
mean,
it's you can't get him because I just don't think he's available. But also, like you would need a king's ransom. The only person that I could see fitting with them, essentially, because Simmons I get, but I don't necessarily see the fit. But it's gonna be difficult to pull him off. I think Karl Anthony Towns is like the guy. Like I
you know
thought it
what's
was good.
funny, Chris? You
I
know
thought
what's funny? His name popped in my head. Like if Minnesota, because honestly, if you're Minnesota at this point, you might as well just blow it up. Like I don't care if D'Lo and Cat haven't got the chance to play with one another. They're not gonna do anything together. When I've said this about Minnesota too many times. You can score 115 points per game. That's awesome. But if you're going to let up 140 because two of your five starters are crap at defense, it doesn't matter if you could score. It doesn't matter. Say what you want about like the 7 seconds or less offense Suns. If they give up 140, you could actually believe they'll get 150. That was real. Minnesota, there's no reason to believe that because Karl Anthony Towns, I'm sorry, everything that happened off the court, like you feel for the guy, but this is on the court. And on the court, he has been the worst defensive center in league history. That's not an opinion. That is a statistical fact if you look at the defensive numbers when he's on the floor. That's terrible. And you combine that, like, if you're Minnesota, I talked about Portland being a team where you could get, like, pieces back for a rebuild. Can Minnesota not do the same thing here, fellas? Like, if you're the New Orleans Pelicans at number 10, I know I'm bringing up a different team here, my bad, but like if you're New Orleans at number 10, like you have a couple future firsts with the Lakers picks, why don't you put like this year's 10th pick and and like two of those future Lakers picks and send it over for D'Lo? Because if allegedly Zion wants this team to win, like D'Lo is better than what you currently have. Like I'm just saying, like if you're Minnesota, just give up the guys that are there because they're not going to win. They're right now. What we're assuming for next season, like, do any of us think Minnesota can even compete for the play-in next season?
No, I don't want to make predictions just yet because I do have a take on Minnesota. I do think they wanna because I don't think they've gotten a full year of Towns and Russell playing together and Anthony Edwards as well. I think they want to give it a little bit more time. So I don't necessarily see that move. I do think Cat is the ideal option for the Warriors as just like that star that they need. Um, for I thought it should have been Vucevic, and I think me and Dame have talked about in our group chat. Like Vucevic would have been perfect for that team. That could have been affordable as well, but I mean, it took two first rounders to get him. But yeah, I don't know. The Warriors thing is interesting. They're a team to definitely look out for. Minnesota is always just going to be they're going to be weird because if you don't make it next year, I think there's going to be rumblings about a Karl Anthony Towns trade essentially. But yeah, that's a different conversation. But yeah, it's just a bunch of things can occur. The combine is on right now. Again, we're recording Thursday. I just expect a lot of movement going to the draft. And Woj reported that I think it was the Cavs, the Magic, and a few teams that are like reportedly trying to shop their picks for like proven young stars. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
definitely see in the coming weeks. The draft is, I believe, July 30th. I think, yeah. So next month should be good. But that is a wrap for this week, fellas. Always a pleasure. Expertise analysis as always. And yeah, for anyone that was listening this whole time, appreciate y'all. I'm not missing anything else there. Oh yeah, plugins, social media plugins. Jurg, what do we got?
At somewhat.sports for all your needs on Instagram. We actually, the second the results were up, we posted on the page what they were, and we previewed today's episode, of course. So, we always deliver. And yeah, and follow us on there, help us grow. We're still putting out the daily polls for the games. Well, obviously it'll be after it's posted, but tonight, as of we're recording, we're going to put up the polls for the games tonight between Montreal, Vegas, and Phoenix and LA. And then tomorrow, for everyone that follows, you'll see up on the page the polls for the Game 7 in the NHL. and the game 2 between the Bucks and Hawks. So, playoffs, man, we're heating up. We're going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals come next week, and I think in a week and a half, 2 weeks from now, we're going to be in the NBA Finals. Like, off-season time is approaching, so we got to enjoy the end of the playoffs while we can.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I'm pretty like the playoffs have been very fun to watch, especially for the NBA Conference Finals because I've been watching that more. But according to Jurg, same thing with the NHL. So sports is just euphoria right now, and we cover them. So yeah, that's that. So till next time, peace, everyone.
Peace.